Adverbs for increase and decrease trends. Sharply. With a clear and sudden change. Internet usage among teenagers increased sharply between 2015 and 2020. Tourism to the island increased sharply after it was featured in a famous movie. The population of the city increased sharply due to rural-urban migration trends. Steeply. At a very high or sudden rate. The rate of smartphone adoption increased steeply across developing countries. Visitor numbers to the museum dropped steeply after the major exhibition ended. Demand for organic produce climbed steeply as awareness of health issues spread. Rapidly. Very quickly or in a short time. The number of electric vehicles on the road increased rapidly over recent years. Smartphone penetration in rural areas expanded rapidly during the last decade. The company's market share grew rapidly after the launch of their flagship product. Exponentially. Increasing more and more rapidly. Sales figures for the product grew exponentially after the advertising campaign. The spread of the virus increased exponentially without immediate intervention. The number of online shoppers climbed exponentially during the pandemic years. Suddenly. Without warning or unexpectedly fast. House prices suddenly decreased due to the unexpected economic downturn. Internet usage suddenly surged following the introduction of faster connections. The stock market suddenly soared when the merger news was officially confirmed. Abruptly. Very quickly and without warning. The company's stock value fell abruptly after reports of internal fraud emerged. International investments abruptly fell after the announcement of new regulations. The number of gym memberships abruptly rose after New Year's resolutions began. Swiftly. Happening or moving very quickly. Ticket sales swiftly rose once the discounted prices were officially announced. Internet penetration swiftly grew across rural areas due to government subsidies. Crime rates swiftly fell after the introduction of stricter law enforcement measures. Briskly. Quickly, energetically, and efficiently. Grocery prices briskly surged after supply chain disruptions intensified globally. The demand for renewable energy sources increased briskly in the past decade. Exports briskly expanded after the country signed several new trade agreements. Markedly. Noticeably or clearly different or changed. Car ownership rates markedly declined as fuel prices reached an all-time high. The company's revenue markedly rose after diversifying its product offerings. Average life expectancy markedly increased after major healthcare advancements. Dramatically. In a striking or extreme manner. Smartphone sales rose dramatically during the Black Friday promotional period. The car sales figures dropped dramatically during the economic recession of 2008. Production rates improved dramatically once the factory upgraded its old machinery. Adverbs for moderate changes. Gradually. Happening slowly over a period. The unemployment rate gradually decreased over the first half of the decade. The number of tourists gradually increased after the marketing campaign launch. Population growth gradually slowed down after government intervention policies. Steadily. In a stable, continuous, or consistent way. Employment rate steadily rose as economic recovery continued across the country. Energy consumption steadily declined due to increased use of renewable resources. Hospital admissions steadily decreased as public health awareness programs spread. Slowly. At a low or reduced speed. Agricultural output slowly increased thanks to improved farming techniques. The unemployment rate decreased slowly after the economic recession ended. Manufacturing costs slowly rose as raw material prices fluctuated unpredictably. Consistently. In a regular and dependable manner. The number of tourists visiting the city increased consistently over the years. Revenue from online sales increased consistently throughout the last quarter. Crime rates consistently dropped after new security measures were introduced. Moderately. To a medium or reasonable extent. Sales of smartphones moderately increased between January and June of 2024. Interest rates moderately declined during the second quarter of the financial year. Student enrollment moderately increased at the university over the 5-year period. Progressively. Increasing or advancing step by step. The company's market share progressively expanded over the next 5 years. Tourist arrivals progressively grew, following aggressive international promotions. Production efficiency progressively improved, with the introduction of automation. Slightly. By a small or minor amount. Production costs slightly fluctuated during the first half of the observed period. The population of the town slightly decreased due to outward migration trends. The unemployment rate slightly dropped between 2010 and 2012 in rural areas. Marginally. Just barely or to a small extent. The unemployment rate decreased marginally during the first quarter of 2025. Profits have increased marginally, despite the challenging economic conditions. The average temperature marginally increased during the final months of the year. Gently. With lightness, softness, or mild force. The average price of oil gently fluctuated during the period shown in the graph. The share price gently declined after peaking midway through the trading session. Tourist arrivals gently rose over the summer months, reflecting seasonal patterns. Continuously. Without stopping or constant in time. Smartphone usage continuously grew, from 2010 to 2020 among all age groups. The population in urban areas has continuously increased over the past decade. Water consumption continuously rose in urban centers, as shown in the statistics. Adverbs indicating decline or fall. Substantially. To a great or considerable extent. The number of tourists visiting the island increased substantially over 5 years. The city's population has grown substantially since the opening of the new airport. The company's profits increased substantially after launching the new product line. Noticeably. In a way that is easily seen. Public transportation usage noticeably declined due to higher ticket prices last year. University enrollment noticeably dropped after tuition fees were significantly raised. The demand for organic produce noticeably increased during the studied time period. Significantly. In an important or meaningful way. Literacy rates significantly rose among rural populations in the last 2 decades. Unemployment rates decreased significantly after the government's new policies. The population density in major cities increased significantly in the last 5 years. Minimally. To the smallest possible degree. The production cost minimally increased after the introduction of new materials. Mobile data usage minimally rose compared to previous years' substantial growth. The unemployment rate minimally declined despite significant policy interventions. Relatively. In comparison with something else. The number of tourists has increased relatively steadily over the past few years. The employment rate in the region has improved relatively quickly since last year. Unemployment rates have decreased relatively slowly compared to other countries. Proportionately. In a way that maintains balance. Healthcare spending increased proportionately with the aging population rates. Salaries increased proportionately with the rising cost of living during the decade. The number of Internet users grew proportionately with the global population rise. Negligibly. So small as to be unimportant. Industrial waste output negligibly decreased after the installation of new filters. The price of basic commodities negligibly increased despite significant inflation. Student enrollment numbers negligibly fluctuated during the 5-year study period. Diminishingly. Becoming smaller or less over time. Public interest in landline phones declined diminishingly over the last 2 decades. The effectiveness of traditional advertising became diminishingly visible after 2010. Factory emissions reduced diminishingly, despite installing modern filtration systems. Sequentially. In a specific or logical order. Gas prices sequentially fluctuated each quarter throughout the studied decade. Unemployment rates have decreased sequentially since the start of the fiscal year. The country's GDP grew sequentially for 3 consecutive years from 2022 to 2025. Persistently. Continuing firmly despite challenges. House rental prices persistently increased in urban centers from 2005 to 2015. Traffic congestion persistently worsened despite the construction of new highways. Water consumption in urban areas has persistently risen due to population growth. Adverbs for making comparisons. Comparatively. In comparison with something else. The birth rate in Asia grew comparatively higher than in Europe after 2000. Employment rates grew comparatively better in urban areas than in rural locations. Compared to previous years, profits showed comparatively stronger growth in 2023. Similarly, in a like or similar manner, both smartphone and laptop sales similarly experienced a steady upward trend. Similarly, the export volumes for both countries rose significantly over the decade. The number of students graduating has increased similarly across most universities. Equally, to the same extent or degree, both public and private sectors have equally contributed to economic growth. Both developed and developing countries have seen similar increases in energy use. Internet usage grew equally among teenagers and adults during the observed period. Correspondingly, in a matching or related way, the cost of housing rose, and the average income increased correspondingly. Urban migration increased, and infrastructure development grew correspondingly. As the economy improved, employment rates grew correspondingly in many regions. Proportionally, in proper ratio or relative amount. Carbon emissions fell proportionally to the drop in industrial production rates. Proportionally, the rise in sales was aligned with increased marketing expenditure. The number of cars on the road increased proportionally to the population growth. Contrastingly, in a strikingly different way, online retail grew exponentially. Contrastingly, traditional stores saw declines. Urban areas saw an increase in population. Contrastingly, rural areas saw a decline. House prices increased in major cities. Contrastingly, rural areas experienced declines. Conversely, in an opposite or reverse manner, rural areas experienced depopulation. Conversely, urban areas saw rapid growth. Sales in Europe increased. Conversely, sales in America witnessed a gradual decline. The number of students in higher education increased. Conversely, dropout rates fell. Inversely, in the opposite order or direction. Inversely, inflation increased when national savings rates continued to decline. Demand for physical stores fell inversely, as online shopping gained momentum. Unemployment rates inversely declined, as the economy recovered after the crisis. Relatively, In relation or proportion to something. Tourism revenue remained relatively high, despite travel restrictions in early 2020. The price of luxury goods remained relatively stable, despite economic fluctuations. Average household income grew relatively steadily, compared to previous decades. Analogously. In a comparable or similar way. Analogously, the rise in Internet users mirrored the growth in mobile devices. Analogously, increased research funding resulted in more scientific breakthroughs. Analogously, the decline in TV viewership paralleled the rise of streaming platforms. Adverbs of time and frequency. Previously. At an earlier time or before now. Previously, smartphone sales had surged before the market became saturated. Previously, transportation was limited, but it increased significantly in recent years. Previously, manufacturing industries were dominant, but service sectors grew more. Subsequently. After something else, later in time. The population grew rapidly and subsequently plateaued over the next decade. Prices surged during winter, subsequently dropping sharply in early spring months. Demand climbed significantly, subsequently slowing as market saturation took hold. Eventually. In the end, after some time. Employment rates eventually declined despite initial gains during the early year. The demand for electric vehicles grew, eventually surpassing that of gasoline cars. The population in cities increased, eventually leading to infrastructure shortages. Thereafter. After that time, from then on. Sales dropped sharply and remained relatively low thereafter for 2 years. Oil production peaked in 2015, thereafter experiencing a gradual yearly decline. Market shares improved briefly, thereafter experiencing another slight downturn. Formerly. In the past, previously or once. Prices formerly fluctuated dramatically during the early stages of development. This sector formerly witnessed consistent growth throughout the early decades. Exports formerly grew faster before international competition became too strong. Lately. Recently, in the past few days. Property investments have lately risen, despite global economic uncertainty. Lately, the national debt has increased, due to substantial government spending. Traffic congestion has lately decreased after recent infrastructure improvements. Currently. At the present moment or now. Currently, unemployment rates are dropping due to new job creation programs. Currently, the demand for renewable energy sources is higher than ever before. Currently, the job market is showing signs of recovery, especially in urban areas. Recently. Not long ago, in recent times. Consumer spending has recently fallen after significant inflationary pressures. Recently, e-commerce transactions have increased significantly across all regions. Manufacturing activity has recently risen, fueled by stronger international demand. Simultaneously. At the same exact time together. Demand for electric cars simultaneously rose, while petrol vehicle sales dropped. Population growth and industrial output simultaneously surged after the reforms. Enrollment in online courses simultaneously grew, as traditional classes saw declines. Adverbs for steady trends. Constantly. Happening all the time without stopping. The number of tourists visiting the island constantly increased throughout the year. The average temperature constantly rose during the summer months of each year. Student enrollment in science programs constantly increased over the last 5 years. Stably. In a steady and unchanging manner. The population grew stably throughout the years, without significant fluctuations. The company's revenue increased stably, reflecting consistent consumer demand. The demand for clean energy has risen, stably increasing investment in technology. Uniformly. In an even and consistent way. Unemployment rates dropped uniformly, benefiting all sectors of the economy. Internet access uniformly expanded across rural and urban areas in the country. The company's profits increased uniformly, with no major fluctuations observed. Invariably. Always happens the same every time. Attendance at major festivals invariably increased, regardless of weather conditions. Electricity consumption invariably grew during the winter months each passing year. Grocery prices invariably fell during harvest seasons in agricultural-based economies. Statistically. Based on data or numerical analysis. Statistically, the average household income rose steadily over the past 10 years. Statistically, smartphone ownership grew rapidly among young adults after 2015. Statistically, air pollution levels dropped in cities, promoting green public transport. Equally. In the same amount or degree. Electric vehicle adoption equally rose across multiple economic classes worldwide. Healthcare service availability equally improved in all regions after policy changes. Investments in technology equally increased across public and private sectors alike. Consistently. Regularly behaving the same every time. Smartphone usage consistently grew over the entire observed 10-year period. The price of housing consistently increased in major metropolitan areas globally. Food prices consistently dropped following increased agricultural production rates. Repeatedly. Done again and again over time. The number of students enrolling in universities increased repeatedly over time. Train ticket prices repeatedly increased due to rising fuel and maintenance costs. The price of oil increased repeatedly throughout the years, showing a clear trend. Adverbs for precision and focus. Specifically. In a detailed and exact manner. Attendance specifically dropped after the introduction of online learning modules. The birth rate specifically fell among urban populations during the surveyed period. Specifically, car ownership expanded dramatically in developing countries after 2015. Notably, in a way that is remarkable. Exports to neighboring countries notably surged during the second fiscal quarter. Notably, the consumption of dairy products declined among younger age groups. Energy consumption increased notably during the summer months in urban areas. Precisely. Exactly and without any doubt. The data shows that the temperature dropped precisely by 2 degrees Celsius over 5 years. The number of visitors increased precisely by 20% between January and March. The chart clearly indicates precisely how much the production costs have dropped. Explicitly. Clearly and directly expressed or stated. The statistics explicitly state the percentage increase in student enrollment. The chart explicitly identifies when the market started to experience a downturn. The data explicitly demonstrates a decrease in carbon emissions over the decade. Strictly. In a controlled or exact way. The statistics strictly highlight the fall in production rates during the recession. The population growth strictly adhered to the projected model over the decade. The sales figures strictly adhered to the seasonal trend observed in previous years. Deliberately. Done on purpose, intentionally planned. The population data was deliberately categorized to reflect regional differences. The price increase was deliberately timed to coincide with peak holiday shopping. The data indicates that prices were deliberately lowered to attract more customers. Objectively. Without bias, based on facts. The data objectively highlights the increase in average wages across the country. The report objectively measures the impact of the new policy on market behavior. Objectively, we can conclude that education levels have risen over the last decade. Factually. According to facts and actual events. Factually, the unemployment rate decreased, reflecting an improving economy. The number of cars on the road has increased, factually speaking, over the years. The report factually shows that energy consumption has decreased over the years. Accurately. Correctly and without any mistakes. The figures accurately forecast the population increase, based on historical trends. The survey results accurately reflect the decrease in consumer confidence over time. The chart accurately depicts the drop in industrial output during the recession period. Adverbs to show degree and emphasis. Enormously. To a very large or immense degree. Consumer spending has increased enormously, reflecting a booming economy. The population of urban areas has increased enormously over the past decade. The number of digital subscriptions has increased enormously in the last decade. Exceptionally. Unusually or remarkably in quality or degree. The average temperature rose exceptionally, leading to significant climate changes. Exports from the country grew exceptionally, setting new records in industry growth. Online education participation increased exceptionally, due to the pandemic's impact. Tremendously. Extremely large, intense in degree. The demand for online education increased tremendously during the pandemic. The number of tourists visiting the region has increased tremendously since 2000. Internet usage has expanded tremendously in developing countries in recent years. Considerably. To a notable or significant extent. The amount of waste produced decreased considerably after the new policies. Life expectancy has increased considerably due to improvements in healthcare. The number of people using mobile phones has increased considerably since 2010. Intensely. Great force, energy, or concentration. Online shopping has become intensely popular, especially during the holidays. The demand for organic products has increased intensely over the last decade. The rate of technological advancement has intensified intensely over recent years. Immensely. To an extremely large or vast extent. Education standards have improved immensely due to new teaching techniques. Immensely, the use of solar power has gained traction worldwide in recent years. Immensely, global oil consumption has decreased due to environmental concerns. Profoundly. Significantly influencing something. The shift towards remote work has profoundly changed workplace dynamics. The increase in automation has profoundly impacted manufacturing industries. Education systems have been profoundly influenced by technological innovations. Extraordinarily. Remarkably beyond ordinary limits. The popularity of plant-based diets has increased extraordinarily in recent years. The number of electric vehicles has increased extraordinarily in the last few years. Technological advancements have progressed extraordinarily over the past decade.